Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art and culture, and this is Billboard Breakdown. So okay, we've got ourselves another busy week on Billboard Breakdown here. Multiple new entries into the top 10, a whole load of new songs shuffling up and down the charts, and a slew of new chart arrivals. Some of that were pretty easy to predict and some that did seem to come out of nowhere. More importantly to my American audience, this week chronicled by this Billboard Hot 100 corresponds with the Super Bowl. And that meant one artist performing at the halftime show managed to make a big impact with two singles surging back onto the charts. Here are two clues. It wasn't the headliner, and it was one of the few things interesting about that whole game experience before the mother of all bad calls courtesy of the Seahawks. I mean, wow, no matter how many bad songs show up this week on the charts, and there were a few, I don't think anything is beating that. But okay, let's forget sports for a second and talk about our top 10. As usual, the top 3 are fairly static this week, but it's the details that get interesting. Uptown Funk by Mark Ronson and Bruno Mars holds onto the top, but its airplay gains are slowing significantly, and its sales weren't as strong this week. But note that Ed Sheeran's Thinking Out Loud, it's not slowing yet in terms of its airplay, and its sales were not that far behind. Does it have a chance of overtaking Uptown Funk if it peaks? Well, regardless of all that, it doesn't look like Hozier's Take Me to Church will last much longer, because while streaming is still strong, the sales are shrinking and airplay looks to have peaked. And while it holds steady enough, it probably won't last long as Sugar by Maroon 5, which had a good sales week, still is gaining in airplay, and is holding its own in streaming. It certainly did better than Taylor Swift's Blank Space, which is dropping in all categories, including a particularly bad week in sales. But now we need to talk about our first of our new entries in the top 10. 4 or 5 Seconds by Rihanna, Kanye West, and Paul McCartney, mostly rising into this position off the back of the video. I gotta be honest, I wasn't expecting this trend to do as well as it did, but keep in mind that Rihanna's been away from the charts for a while. Hell, so is Kanye, at least on tracks from his own albums. And as I said when I covered the song a couple weeks ago, there's a lot to like about it. Rihanna sounds great, the organ and guitars have a lot of ragged texture, and even Kanye sounds better than he usually does. Now, I will stand by my criticism that the lyrics don't really match the tone of the instrumentation, but the song works well enough and the charts definitely have rewarded it thanks to massive streaming gains, solid enough sales, and real airplay gains. It was enough to shove back Lips Are Moving by Meghan Trainor and I'm Not the Only One by Sam Smith to 7 and 8 respectively. The former because of weak sales and what looks like softening airplay, and the latter pretty much in free fall all across the board, especially in airplay. It certainly won't last long. It's our second new top 10 entry, Love Me Like You Do by Ellie Goulding, coming off of the 50 Shades of Grey soundtrack. And look, I get why it's slowly getting airplay, a lot of good YouTube and a really good sales week, and Ellie Goulding does sound great on this song, but really, that's all it's got it going for it. The instrumentation is clunky, the writing is really sloppy, and for a song that's soundtracking erotica, it's stunningly unsexy. Rounding out our list, much to my surprise, is Shake It Off by Taylor Swift. And really at this point, it's YouTube and streaming keeping this afloat, because the sales are not good and the airplay only keeps dropping. And with both singles in trouble in the top 10, well, Taylor Swift, that style video can drop anytime. But before we talk about that, let's talk about our losers and dropouts. Most of the latter being songs that I've talked about in previous episodes that were on their way out anyways. Dangerous by David Guetta, Perfect Storm by Brad Paisley, Steal My Girl by One Direction, and with them, Rude by Magic finally leaving the charts. Now the one surprise dropout for me was All About It by Hoodie Allen featuring Ed Sheeran. It seemed like it was suddenly gaining steam and then it just kind of evaporated. What the hell? Now our losers are slightly more explainable. Something in the Water by Carrie Underwood, Heroes by Alesso featuring Tove Lo, and The Hanging Tree by Jennifer Lawrence all continued their descents to 74, 56, and 53 respectively, just all running out of speed. I Live by One Republic and Try Me by DJ Loaf, they could be in similar situations, just losing whatever momentum they have. Talladega by Eric Church though dropping to 57, it's a little bit more surprising because normally country radio tends to be a little bit more static. But then again, even despite being the best Eric Church song off of The Outsiders, didn't exactly light the world on fire, I'm sorry. And then finally, we've got Throw Some More by Ray Schmemmer, featuring Nicki Minaj and Young Thug, and God Made Girls by Ray Lynn, dropping to 77 and 95 for a very simple explanation, at least in my mind. They suck. Now granted, if songs lost out for being crap, our gainers would probably look a lot different. AO by Chris Brown and Tyga rising to 36, Somebody by Natalie LaRose and Jeremiah going to 59, Not For Long by B.O.B. and Trey Songz rising to 80, Trap Queen by Fetty Wap rising to 60. These range from being barely passable to outright crap, and yet they're still being kept afloat. Now to be fair, there are some gains that I don't really mind. Heartbeat Song by Kelly Clarkson gains strength off of its video debut to go up to 34, Chains by Nick Jonas and Talkin' Body by Tove Lo get a solid start off their debuts last week to get to 76 and 83, and Style by Taylor Swift continues its meteoric rise to crack the top 20 at 18. As I said, if it dropped a video, it'd be in the top 10 in a week, if not higher. But you know what? The video's debuting tomorrow, so let's see what happens there. But now we come to our returning entries and where things really start to get interesting. Starting with...
Give it to me, I'm worth it. Baby, I'm worth it. I'm worth it. Give me, I'm worth it. Give it to me, I'm worth it.
I already talked about this song 2 weeks ago, and really nothing has changed. It's still biting way too hard from Talk Dirty in the instrumentation. Kidding's verse is completely pointless, and the pre-chorus from Normani is still the best part of the song. And even that is set against this hollow, thin vocal production that does nothing to complement any of their voices. People may have criticized my Fifth Harmony review a lot for drawing too many comparisons to Little Mix, but I don't even need comparisons to say the song is mediocre, derivative, and it's only charting thanks to their albums dropping in close succession. That's it. Next. So in case you didn't watch the Super Bowl, welcome to the club, Katy Perry's surprise guest at the halftime show was Missy Elliott of all people. And that came out of nowhere. Missy Elliott hasn't dropped an album in a decade. And outside of some scattered singles and collaborations and some comparisons critics made between her work and Azalea Banks, it'd be easy to ask if she was still relevant. But two of her biggest singles returning to the charts imply that people do care, so let's start with 2001's Get Your Freak On. And now I'll be honest, this isn't one of my favorite Missy Elliott singles. The instrumentation always felt a little bit bare bones with a plucked melody, and the synths designed to create that eerie atmosphere in the back half of the chorus haven't aged exactly well even from 14 years, even coming from Timbaland. And lyrically, there's not exactly much to it in terms of great wordplay or lyrics and bars beyond some just pretty good flow. Really, Missy Elliott is the saving grace of the song, simply because she's got a ton of real forceful charisma that grabs a lot of attention. Overall, not a bad song, and I definitely get its appeal, but there's very little that would get me coming back to it. Maybe it's just not for me.
Is it worth it? Let me work it. I put my thing down, flip it and reverse it. It's your primitive, it's why yet. It's your primitive, it's why yet. If you got a big, let me search it to find out how hard I gotta work. Yeah, it's your primitive, it's why yet. It's your primitive, it's why yet.
Oh man, early 2000s production has not aged well, especially those synth lines. I like Timbaland, but he really came more to his own in the mid-2000s, just saying. Well, putting that aside, this is one of Missy Elliott's weirder tracks, particularly lyrically in terms of some of its sexual imagery. And while Missy Elliott's personality is still a big positive here, some of the bars and some of the gimmicks here, they just kind of bothered me a little bit. The reverse snippet on the chorus, the comparison of a guy going down on her like a vulture, the uses of stuttered sound effects to fill up space. Okay, that's less gimmicky than just sloppy songwriting, but all of it presents a song that's got a lot more personality and it's memorable, but not exactly a song I'm inclined to revisit. Maybe Missy Elliott's just not for me, but I'll say this. I find her brand of sexual dominance a lot better executed than whenever Nicki Minaj or Beyonce tries to pull this off. Just saying. And now on to our newest arrivals, starting with number 100, Girl Crush by Little Big Town.
I want her magic touch, yeah, 'cause maybe then you'd want me just as much. I got a girl crush.
Well, it took it long enough for this single to get over here. Just another part of the rollout of Little Big Town's newest album that feels botched. Painkiller is one of the weirdest country records of 2014. A tough album to market and sell, and even a harder one to really like and dig into. And yet, instead of leading off with songs that show off the more eclectic, distinctive sides of that album to set it apart, and yet remain accessible, and those songs are there, they chose the utterly vapid Day Drinkin', the safe choice, and now followed it with Girl Crush. Granted, it's a lot better of a song, taking guitar melody and organ reminiscent of a watery Unchained melody, and pairing it with lyrics about a girl getting cheated on that spends much more time focusing on the other girl in the picture than the guy. The framing of the song, though, is just kind of odd to me. And it's one of those cases where I feel like an opportunity has been missed in the songwriting. After all, Little Big Town has another female singer with Kimberly Schlotman, and they could have done some cool interplay like with what Reba McEntire and Linda Davis did with Does He Love You? As it is, I still really quite like this song, but when Little Big Town could have released, say, Live Forever or tumble and fall and things you don't think about, Girl Crush just kinda underwhelms me a bit. That's all. Number 98, Out the Speakers by A-Trak and Milo and Otis featuring Rich Kidz. Oh boy, this is gonna take some explanation, mostly because identifying who all these people are, a little bit complicated. Now the easiest here is probably A-Trak, a veteran producer and DJ who's one of the members of Duck Sauce, the duo responsible for that Barbra Streisand song from a couple of years ago. In this case, he chose to work with Milo and Otis, two other producers named after a controversial Japanese film for animal cruelty from the 1980s, and Rich Kidz, a duo of trap rappers. In this case, the only thing that they contribute to the song is some sampled, chopped up vocals, which doesn't exactly bother me all that much. They don't typically have much to say. But really, a track like this is all about the instrumentation. And I'll say it, that original synth choice before the first change-up is great. Grand, potent, balanced well against the crisp hi-hats, and then the beat changes, and we get one of the more grating horn presets that I've heard in a while. It's not enough to ruin this song for me. It's operating more in the vein of Turn Down For What by DJ Snake and Lil Jon, and like that track, about half of it really does work for me, but I do wish it was a lot better. That's just saying. Number 96, Hotel by Kid Ink featuring Chris Brown.
Why you over there looking at me? Let's take it to the hotel. We could take it there. Let's take it to the hotel. Baby, we could take it there. Take it to the...
You know what? I said it when I reviewed Kid Ink's Full Speed, and I'll say it again. I like this song. The synth lines have a good bounce to them, the percussion has this uncanny brittle wobble to it that I really like, and despite the influx of too much Chris Brown on the song, I really dig the vibe. It's not so much slick as it is kind of off kilter, kind of matching how Kid Ink is trying to balance out the situation of having his current girlfriend or his side girl or an ex at the same bar, and trying to parlay the whole situation into a frantic threesome at a hotel. And what I like is in the first verse, Kid Ink makes it very clear that if his girlfriend isn't down for that sort of thing, it's over, he's not gonna do it. Sure, the song is kind of sleazy and opportunistic, but Kid Ink is juggling it just well enough to make it work in my eyes, trying to keep the balance in his favor and still promising to at least give the girls a good time if they agree. He's not trying to deliberately ask anything or is all that presumptuous about it. Now, I'm not saying the song is anything close to great. It's not, but for what it's trying to do in this genre and this vein, you know what? I'll take it. Number 94, A Little Too Much by Shawn Mendes.
But you gotta realize that soon the fog will clear up, and you don't have to be afraid, because we're all the same, and we know that sometimes it all gets a little too much.
So about 6 weeks ago, I discussed Something Big by Shawn Mendes, a song by a Canadian kid from just outside of Toronto that I actually really liked, and he owed his fame to Vine. But now an album has actually been announced for late April, and yes, I'll probably review it, and a new promotional track has been pushed to the radio, A Little Too Much. And if Something Big was biting way too hard from Ed Sheeran's Sing, A Little Too Much is biting from the back catalog of Ed Sheeran that bores me to tears. I've said in the past that white guys with acoustic guitars exasperate me, and this kind of song is the reason why. It's all about a girl going through hard times, or it's all just a little bit too much for her, that has so little detail in the song that allows any girl to slot themselves into the song, where Shawn Mendes will just make it all better. It just rings as very hollow and a little bit manipulative to me. Now, to be fair, I'm willing to cut Shawn Mendes a break here. He's 16, and he's playing it a lot more earnestly than John Mayer would ever have, but talk about really souring my vibe on him, I gotta say. Number 75, Lay Me Down by Sam Smith.
Next to you, and make sure you're alright.
Well, we might as well tackle this now, because I'm not going to be talking about the Grammys, which has been covered to death and back by now. I'm not a fan of Sam Smith. I'm not saying I dislike him, but if I hear a Sam Smith song on the radio, I'm gonna change the station, I'm sorry. He just bores me. He's got the air of a well-trained singer with a great range that doesn't have anything close to visceral power or a real emotive presence. For as much as he sounds like a neo-soul singer, he's got none of the raw fire of D'Angelo or the darkness of Hozier, or even the emotional intensity of John Legend when he's really trying. Coupled with the bare-bones compositions that are nothing all that special or interesting in the melodies, there's nothing that really grips me about Sam Smith. And Lay Me Down, originally the lead-off single from his debut that's only now charting in the United States, it doesn't really change that. Yeah, it's pretty with the strings and the piano, but melodically it's minimalist and nothing all that special, and lyrically it's a song about being separated from your lover, by death or more likely by distance in the lyrics, but it's not exactly detailed or descriptive or tells me all that much about the situation. The one big selling point of the song is Sam Smith's emotional intensity, and I'll give him this, he sounds better here than he does on many of his other songs, but I will say I'm not exactly a fan of that more staccato bridge. It just feels out of place to me on this song. In other words, you know what, Sam Smith's just not for me. He's not bad, but nothing I'm gonna remember or care about in a day or two, and I include this song in that list. And finally, number 54, Blessings by Big Shawn featuring
had a good
Drake.
time in a long time, you know I'm way up, I feel blessed. Way up, I feel blessed. Straight up. I'm way up, I feel blessed. Straight up.
So hey folks, did you know that Big Shawn was dropping a new album in less than 2 weeks? Better question. Did you care? Now, I've gone on record as not being a Big Shawn fan at all. I think he's relentlessly corny, his voice is gratingly nasal, he frequently has terrible lyrics, he's got no emotional intensity, and he's been responsible for songs like Ass and I Don't Fuck With You. Two songs that straddle a line between being so bad they're kind of funny, and so aggressively obnoxious you wish that Kanye would come to his senses and drop him already. Apparently though, this guy has a fan base is now dropping a third album called Dark Sky Paradise. I'm sorry, that's hilarious. And he used his Drake collaboration card to nab a second single. And you know, for as much as Drake is trying to brag about feeling blessed and having a good time, man, he doesn't sound like it, and the ominous bass-heavy beat doesn't help matters. The reverb swollen keyboard line, it just sounds dark and thuddingly depressing. It sounds like nobody's having fun, or it sounds like nobody's being blessed. His flow is a little bit better than Big Shawn here, who seems to wobble across different rhyme cadences as he tries to keep a steady flow. And for as much as Big Shawn says he's blessed, he opens up his second verse saying that his grandmother died, now he's hustling hard overtime. Why would he need to do that if he was really as blessed and set forever as he's described in his first verse? And outside of that, and a really odd tinny echo effect on their voices, this song isn't so much terrible as I usually expect from Big Shawn, but it definitely is forgettable. More bragging that lacks the detail or wordplay to be remotely interesting. And with his album and the Tyga Chris Brown collaboration dropping in the exact same week, man, that week's gonna suck. But okay, forget about that for a little while. How was this week as a whole? Honestly, a mixed bag, leaning less on the bad than just on the unimpressive. The best songs, they're easy. Girl Crush by Little Big Town will take this, with Hotel with Kid Ink and Chris Brown grabbing the honorable mention. As for the worst of the week, see, there was no songs here I'd brand as outright awful, but for plain mediocrity, you know, hear what? I'm splitting it between Worth It by Fifth Harmony and Kid Ink for being derivative and bland, and Blessings by Big Shawn and Drake for being disjointed, sloppily executed, and way too dark to back it up. Let's hope for better next week, and I think it will be better. But until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Billboard Breakdown on Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.